My name is Ashley Nicholson, and I will be presenting my interpersonal communication project for Human Service Counseling 508 at Liberty University. In just a few moments, I will discuss how my background and behavioral blend play a part in the overarching goal I have personally defined as a mode to become an effective communicator and various barriers I will encounter along the way. I will conclude with 3 action steps that allow for completion of this personal goal. But first, let's begin with an overview of defining communication and how to enlarge the conversation. According to our readings, communication can be described as the continuous, complex, collaborative process of verbal and nonverbal meaning-making. Stewart also uses the analogy of breathing to describe 2 aspects of communication, inhaling and exhaling. Inhaling is receiving the message communicated by the sender. Exhaling is sending your message to another person. Effective communication focuses more on inhaling in a conversation over exhaling. To take it a step further, interpersonal communication happens when the people involved talk and listen to ways that maximize the presence of the personal. Compiling these aspects, along with many others, can help us enlarge the conversation in our dialogues. Advancing from the basics of communication, we learned in our course how to enlarge the conversation, or recognize how both listening and speaking must encompass each participant's vision and understanding of the dialogue. The formula for enlarging the conversation is identified needs plus intentional resourcing equals enlarging the conversation. It is surprisingly difficult to realize that other people literally understand things in a way that is different from your understanding of the exact same thing. This difference has the potential to completely block any possibility of mutual comprehension, clarity, or agreement. Knowing the behavioral blend of both or all participants in a conversation facilitates knowing what kinds of questions and resources to examine to reach a mutual vision. Throughout this course, I have been exposed to a vast amount of information on how to communicate properly, along with many resources to help guide me in the learning process. Because of this, I have created an overarching goal to mold me into a better communicator and allow me to enlarge the conversation in personal, professional, and ministry settings. My overarching goal is to effectively communicate through clear, supportive, and honest dialogue while providing empathic and attentive listening. This overarching goal can be achieved when I encompass other related goals such as learning the levels and depths of communication in which I will be able to fully understand my own communication styles. In order to help recognize this style of communication, it is helpful to take a look at my makeup as an individual and where I have been thus far in my life journey. I am blessed to have grown up in a faith-based home with 2 supportive and loving parents and a sometimes wiser older brother. I attended the University of Charleston in West Virginia, where I obtained my bachelor's in communications. During my college years, I completed an internship in Orlando, Florida at Walt Disney World. After graduation, I moved to where I currently reside in Seattle, Washington. Moving all over the country and working at Disney has allowed me to encounter diverse cultures, religious backgrounds, numerous ways of living, and a multitude of personality differences. Going from a conservative upbringing to a very liberal community, my interactions and conversations have not always been productive. This cultural conflict has at times left me feeling a lack of confidence, confused, and sometimes threatened. Once I am able to fully capture who I am as an individual, I will be able to help break down diversity barriers, which in return can offer aid in building back my confidence and clarify misunderstandings. During this course, I had the opportunity to take the DISC profile test. The results are made up of 4 temperament quadrants describing an individual's personality. D for active and task-oriented, I for active and people-oriented, S for passive and people-oriented, and C for passive and task-oriented. My behavioral blend is ISC, meaning I have strong people skills, I enjoy peace and harmony, I love organized environments, and I thrive on interacting and influencing others in an enthusiastic manner. Conversely, I lack assertiveness, I'm indecisive, and I would do anything to avoid confrontation. Another tool that has been vital in learning my behavioral blend is the Clifton Strength Finder. These results measure an individual's natural talent found in their recurring patterns of thought, feeling, or behavior. The more dominant a theme, the greater the impact on an individual's performance in an everyday setting. Out of my top 5 themes, 3 of which are centered around getting to know someone on a personal level. Woo, or winning others over, is deriving satisfaction from meeting and connecting with another person. Includer, or becoming aware of those left out and finding ways to include them. And individualization, or the finding of a person's unique and different qualities and figuring out how to use those differences to work together. Combining both my background and behavioral blend, I am able to discover how I can successfully communicate in various settings. Understanding not only my temperaments, but being aware of other themes and personalities will allow future conversations to become fuller, richer, and more in depth. As I evolve into a better communicator, I have and will continue to come across certain barriers in my interpersonal context. The first and most prominent barrier in my dialogue is meta-messaging, also known as the unspoken message about the relationship between speaker and hearer, what is said, by the way something is said, who says it, or the fact that it is said at all. I am my own worst enemy when it comes to criticism, so it is very easy to turn a simple situation into a negative spiral very quickly. Another barrier I have come across in my interpersonal context is knowing the difference between listening versus hearing. Burley Allen stated in our readings that we spend 70% of our day in verbal communication, 40% of which is spent simply listening. Unfortunately, listening is not as simple as most of us assume. I have always thought that I was a good listener, as I grew up with a hearing-impaired brother. Not only did I have to use my ears, but I acted as his as well. Double the ears means extra listening, right? After all of our readings, I have reflected on how important listening versus hearing truly is, and unfortunately how often I have taken it for granted. A third barrier I come across is the flat brain syndrome. This occurs when our emotions and our thoughts cloud our ability to fully communicate properly. The outside world does not stop when we are in the midst of a conversation. Anything occurring during an interaction can be considered another barrier, also known as noise pollution. Noise pollution can be both internal and external. Internal noise pollution is both physical and physiological, such as lack of conversation, defensiveness, assumptions, emotional state, and judgments. External noise pollution is both physical and somatic, such as outside noise interruptions and room temperature. Sometimes there are simple solutions to break down barrier walls that mute our communication. These include, but are not limited to, eliminating distractions, taking notes, clarifying thinking, reducing emotional disturbances, focusing on the talker, and mindful listening. Other times, when a solution is not so simple, one can create an action plan that involves steps to overcome potential barriers that can hinder a conversation. I have compiled a 3-step action plan that will be adopted into my everyday dialogue. As I evolve, I will continue to come back to these 3 steps to make sure I am effectively enlarging the conversation to the best of my ability. The first step is learning more internally about myself, my behavioral blend, how I react in certain situations, asking myself and others how particular words or phrases come across to the listener. And in order to become a successful communicator, I must put forth and grow my positive personality traits and continue to work on areas that do not come naturally to me, like confrontation in a productive way or making decisions. Step 2 is eliminating barriers. What are the items that hinder my conversation? Where do I get frustrated or annoyed? When do I continually see the talker getting frustrated at my dialogue or way of communicating? And step 3 is examining my listening skills, learning how to always listen and not just hear, becoming more of an empathic and mindful listener, asking questions to clarify any misunderstandings, and simply making sure I am constantly giving the speaker the respect and attention I prefer when the roles are reversed. With my overarching goal and action plan in mind, I am reminded of one of my favorite quotes that will help encourage me to understand the importance of enlarging the conversation and building relationships. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. People will never forget how you made them feel. Maya Angelou.